Hello everyone, may the 4th be with you. Hope you've been enjoying those overused jokes today. I have, and I've been indulging them in as well. Not original, but funny. So for those of you who haven't checked the internet, Twitter, or just generally spoken to anyone who likes Fallout today, you'll be pleased to note that Bethesda have actually released effectively the trailer for the Far Harbor DLC. Now I'm going to do something a little bit different because basically one thing I learned from the last 2 DLCs is basically every man and his dog is going to make the same stop and start analysis trailer. Not that they're bad, it's just that we've all probably watched 5 or 6 of them already and watched the trailer about 23 times. Specifically 23. If you haven't watched the trailer, there's a link in the description and there will still be a pop-up now telling you to go watch the trailer. So I'm not going to do that. Instead, what I want to talk about is actually my ideas for the trailer, also kind of my analysis of what I think we're going to be getting. So basically, first and off the bat, we already knew this, but this is definitely a look at my lovely stairs, by the way. Oh, by the way, the whole backdrop of this video is live, and I'm going to be just basically giving you a tour of my funky sanctuary. These stairs work so well. They're so perfect. Oh, my gods. Anyway, so basically, we know for a start that this is going to be a case that Nick Valentine gets offered by a potential client, in this case an unnamed woman, wanting us to help her find her daughter. Now, pretty much Gather the House is going to get, we're going to install the DLC, and then we're going to get a little quest pop up, probably meet Nick Valentine at Valentine's Detective Agency, go there, meet her, have the blurb, whichever port or coastal area there is for us to jump on a boat, jump on the boat, get to Far Harbor. But however, here's the thing, right? So, this is where I start theorizing. So, the trailer opens ostensibly, that it opens effectively set in Nick's office. You can't see Nick's office, but that's where it is. You know, you're hearing the dialogue in Nick's office. And then it ends, as you now have seen the trailer, if you haven't already, pause and go see the bloody trailer. But basically ends with Nick Valentine emerging in this lab, looking like, I don't know, Locutus of Borg or something. You know, he looks like a complete monstrosity, but clearly something's happened to him. But he's not in pain. He doesn't look uncomfortable. He looks kind of quite unsettling, actually. And here's my theory on this, is that this is a trap. Or maybe not a trap, this is a ruse to get, not you, they don't give a shit about you. You're just some stupid little vault dweller who happened to be in the wrong place. But they want Nick Valentine. Specifically, the synths want Nick Valentine. Now, I don't think for nefarious purposes, but I'll get on that. But my idea is the whole premise of this DLC is it's Nick's story and you're in for the ride. So let's talk about the factions for a second before I get on to kind of the wider context of Nick and his place in the DLC. So you've got the 3 that we knew about, which are the kind of, I guess, the Far Harbor settlers themselves, the Children of Atom, and also the kind of synth community. Now, if you had to give these an alignment from the dialogue in the DLC, even though this is very clearly going to be one grey as hell DLC in terms of who is necessarily right or wrong, you could probably say that the human settlers are effectively, you know, the Minutemen equivalent, which means, you know, if you wanted to be a purely good guy, you could probably hype those guys out and, you know, feel pretty good about yourself. Then, on the opposite end of the spectrum, you've got the Church of Atom, which probably have a weird twisted logic, and you could almost, there's definitely be a benefit for you to help them. But they're effectively evil, but I wouldn't go so far as they're evil, it's just more just very chaotic. You know, their probably whole aim is to just irradiate everyone in some way or the other. There's quite a firstly, you can see them in funky new clothing, which is pretty cool. And also, I believe it was from Mr. Maddie's Plays, I think, did a little video kind of going into the fact that we're going to get quite a lot of new facial paint and facial tattoos for the Children of Atom. So basically, we're going to definitely get stuff from those, but they're definitely going to be the more morally, not ambiguous, actually, morally reprehensible faction to side with. But then in the middle, you've got the synths. Now, my theory on the synths and how they relate to Nick is really quite interesting. Well, I think it's quite interesting. Nick is basically a prototype bridge between the Gen 2s and the Gen 3 synths. So he's more advanced than a Gen 2. It's about the Gen 1s, the skeletons. The Gen 2s are the ones which look like they're made out of plastic, and then the Gen 3s are the human ones. And basically, it seems to me, my idea maybe, is that the synths we're going to meet are effectively the ones, they're going to look like Nick. Nick is, I don't think they're going to be Gen 3s, or maybe not all of them. I have a sneaking suspicion the woman who actually offers us the initial quest might be a Gen 3. But I think there can be some Gen 2s, and maybe, oops, sorry, Sturgis, I stole one of your Nuka-Colas, mate. But they're going to be kind of some of them might even be prototypes like Nick. But Nick is important because I think he's going to be the precursor to the synths we actually meet. Which might also explain why he was discarded in the way he was. He might have not necessarily been discarded. Again, this is why I think this is Nick's story. This is ostensibly about us finding a lost girl. But what it really is about is finding out who Nick is. That's why he didn't look so upset. If you look at the screenshot, he says this might get a little bit weird. Whatever the hell he says, I can't remember specifically. But he doesn't look like he's trapped or been turned against his will. I think Nick is maybe finding out who he really is. And with the synths, it could be argued, and I think this is the case, that it's more going to be that they're the neutral faction, or the faction that maybe won't benefit anyone. It's quite an interesting one. The reason why I think that is because we don't actually see them, and that's very important. We don't see them in the trailer. The inside of this isn't finished yet. But I'll show the inside because it looks funky. But yeah, no, we don't actually see them at all. Now, we've seen synths before. We know what synths look like. We know what Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3s look like. Bethesda made a point to not show us the synths, but also they made a point of only giving them one line, which is about the fact that they don't want any violence. But however, they've killed someone. Now, this is interesting to me. Really interesting. It's telling. Now, Bethesda, they didn't just mash some dialogue together to make it sound cool. There's a point to this. And the point is that there's something untoward or different for these synths comparative to other synths. And it's not just their motives, it's clearly potentially the way they look, potentially the way they act. There might be a reason why we didn't see them, because seeing them might give too much away, and having them say too much. So we know about these synths is they're aloof. You can tell by the way they talk, and by just the dialogue they use. They're kind of, they're robots, but they're just, it's interesting. It's interesting. That's going to be that synth Nick relationship and who these synths are. They're definitely not railroad synths, and they're definitely not your typical X-Institute synths as well. So it's going to be very, very cool. I'm actually pretty much sure they're not anything to do with the railroad whatsoever. Also with the lab that we see at the end, it might be that this is potentially, for example, an X-Institute lab. And then on the human settlers. Now, as I said before, those guys have been beset by all sides. They're ostensibly the good guys, but also I think those guys, their hands aren't completely clean. Mainly because these guys are paranoid. Yeah, that paranoia has fueled them to do things that maybe aren't exactly morally sound. This is also possibly suggested when you see Nora, which, by the way, I like the fact that they actually made Nora, the female sole survivor, the focus of this DLC, not Nate. And the fact is that she mentions that, the people of Far Harbor deserve to know the truth. Now, the truth, there's obviously some big secret. Could be potentially that they're all Gen 3s. That's a big one. That's actually a possibly quite big one. But it maybe seems too obvious, you know what I'm saying? It's like, oh yeah, they're all synths, but there's some kind of secret. Now, it might be, for example, that the people, I think the leaders of Far Harbor, have actually done something quite bad, like the human ones, because they're way too victimized in the trailer. They've got that kind of, every man struggling against all the odds. They're a bit paranoid, but you can understand why. And to me, it just seems way too clear-cut. Don't forget, the whole basis of this, as well, is a detective case, which means everything's not going to be the way it seems. So that's pretty cool. I like that. The Children of Atom, I don't know. I'm wondering how complex they can make them. I think they'll be definitely interesting and engaging, but I don't know if they're going to have the same levels as the human and the synths, but we'll see. Let's talk about the gear, shall we? So that's my theory about the story. I think it's all going to be about Nick. I think you're basically lured there to get Nick there, and the sole survivor is just some extra person who you're just there to fuck everything up, ruin it. You're the spanner in the works, basically. Look at the gear. So, like, we've seen loads of new items. So you've got the diving suit, which we had hints on before. I'm curious to see whether that's modular. It does look a lot like the hazmat suit, and kind of like the space suit from Fallout New Vegas. I'm hoping it's modular because I just like using bits of armor. Knowing our luck, it isn't. However, there's the other armor that you see Nora wearing a shoulder piece of right at the start. I spent so long making this stupid bloody bed for Marcy and Jun. It looks alright, but I resent the fact that I made them a double bed, even though they needed one. Anywho, so it's... Here's the thing, right? So you see the armor, and it's kind of like a military survival suit. Like, it almost looked initially like it was a power armor helmet with some combat armor thrown in, but it's a little bit smaller. However, it's got markings all over it. Now, initially I thought, oh, maybe there's going to be some kind of new tribal, maybe this is something to do with the Children of Atom. No. Here's my theory. This is, now think of the basis, the setting of the game. This is a maritime society. But this is the maritime society, or the maritime area, beset by radiation. So this is definitely a radiation anti-rad suit that enables you to survive in the swamps, particularly because they make heavy mention of the fog and how dangerous it is. I'm curious to see whether it's actually chemically dangerous, as in it'll damage you while you walk through it, or just be dangerous because of the fact that, you know, there are those weird Murloc-looking things, geckos, and what look like the praying mantises in the game. But the markings, now what I think there is, they're scrimshaw. Now, scrimshaw isn't unfamiliar in the Fallout universe. You've seen it in Skyrim, not Fallout, Bethesda game. You've seen it in Skyrim on the tusks of the mammoths. For those who don't know what scrimshaw is, basically it's just carving bone, and kind of carving bone into funky patterns. So I think the armor is actually some scrimshawed old radiation suits. Either you get it from the settlers or you find it piece by piece. But that's what I think the reason for the weird markings are. It's maybe not as interesting it could be, but that'll explain all the carvings onto it. Now, let's hurry up quickly. So the weapons, we see a couple. I think the weapon we see, we do see the harpoon gun, but it's not really clear because we don't see it shoot so much. There's Scraps, by the way, just kind of, you know, walking on the roof, because why not? But then there's also the beardy dude. Looks like it's either a hunting rifle or it might be a repeating rifle, like similar to what we have in New Vegas. I know a lot of people have been clamoring for that, and Bethesda do have quite a nice reputation recently of giving people what they like. So I think it's kind of a repeating rifle, because it would suit him as well. You know, he's quite kind of the old survivor guy, and also it's quite old school. So potentially there. We've also got the bill hook as well, I noticed, which looks suitably brutal. And there's also some new outfits as well, as I said. So the old guy's wearing his only outfit, and then there's a guy behind him in that little scene. This is Nora's grave, by the way. From Twitter, someone gave me the idea for this. It just looks very, very cool. But yeah, I'm curious what you guys think. So I didn't want to dissect the trailer in the same way, because we've all watched it dozens of times, and to us it was giving me a headache just chopping that thing up, knowing that 5, 6, 7, 8 dozen of them are already out already, and they're all the same shit. Plus I get to show you off my settlement. I had no excuse to do it. It's not finished yet, by the way. I started a new game again because I wasn't happy with the way I set it up, but it looks pretty grand. So yeah, what are your thoughts? You know, do you think I'm right on the fact that this is a ruse to bring Nick forward? You know, to trap Nick on the island? Is it done in a malicious way, as in they're trying to harvest Nick, or is it because Nick is some kind of, I don't know, I don't think, personally don't think he's some messiah character. I just think maybe he's important because of his fact as a prototype. So I'd really like to hear your feedback and other theories you guys have on what exactly is going on in the Far Harbor DLC and anything else. I don't really give a shit about what I've missed in terms of the items. You've all seen that before. Watch one of the other dissecting videos. But I'm talking about the story here, because this is what I've been lacking a little bit, because I completed Fallout twice already, and I fine-tooth combed the whole game. So as always, follow me on Twitter at norespawns. There'll be another video up tomorrow. That'll be the arena build, our next section of just whatever I decide to make in the arena next. And I'll talk to you lovely people soon. You take care.